Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Aaron Robinson is a somatic breathwork practitioner, mindfulness facilitator, and the host of Opening Presence, a podcast created to aid those in their path of self-realization. Over the last 4 years, Aaron has dedicated himself to creating spaces for healing, personal growth, and accountability through mindfulness workshops and public conversations for corporations, nonprofits, schools, and communities. Aaron has created a modern framework for beginners to apply meditation and mindfulness practices, making it accessible for all people wherever they're at. I found Aaron's work through the incredible connective world of social media, and I am so stoked to have him here to talk about his work and how he's arrived to the here and now. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you so much for having me, Danae. I couldn't have written that better myself.
You did write it. I tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm super, super honored to have you here, and I love the work that you're doing, obviously. So there's so many sweet iterations of the work that I'm doing and you're setting the tone for doing it in such a nuanced way. So I would love to hear a little bit about how this began for you. There's generally a crunchy moment in time that kind of gets us to this point of us wanting to share our work in a beautiful way. So can you share a little bit about how it started for you?
Of course. Yeah. I think it starts like when I was young, like having like this sense of truth, but then not really having like a direct stage to kind of allow it to exist in the world. Like I've always been an artist. I've always been a deep thinker. I've always been empathetic and could read through the lines of people, situations, and just kind of connecting with spirit on that level, but very, I guess, like confined by the communities that I grew up with in San Diego, California, and not having any sort of like support as far as validating what I knew to be true within. And most of my life was just like not finding like a place for my ideas to land and for them to be seen and heard and witnessed. So I kind of, my whole like adolescence was just like doing what everybody else did and saying the things that everybody else did, and kind of just playing a role for other people to feel comfortable. And that's like my program. So I think just in these last few years, it's been just an explosion of creativity, because it's like, oh, I've been confined for so long, self-confined for so long, and keeping myself small. But the aha transformational moment, the crackly part for me was losing my mother in 2017. And the reflection time afterwards was just like, oh, like, how did this happen? Like, it happened because my mom was very dedicated her life and her energy towards serving others and not into herself. And I found a lot of those same qualities in me. It was like, oh, I'm doing so much for other people and I am giving myself the scraps. And I'm like, oh no, like I see where that gets you. And it was a very visceral one-to-one thing of seeing all of the programs that I had inherited. And I'm grateful like for the lessons, but now it's like I have life and opportunity on my hand to rewrite this narrative that has been passed down from generations in my own family. So I'm like, oh, like I gotta reinvest. I gotta go all in on me, and then everyone else gets my overflow. Like y'all get everything else that I don't consume of my own creative life force energy and my own vision. So flipping that was that big shift for me was like, I'm going to prioritize myself. And then the expression became liberated. I finally like liberated it and said, I'm going to put it out there. And regardless of what I receive back, like this needs to go out, because if it doesn't, then it becomes stagnated and gets trapped in the body and turns into a disease like cancer.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing that intimate piece of your life. I think especially now, especially with all of the information that we have, knowing that stress-induced programs can create these manifestations of illness in our body. Mm-hmm. And with the work that you're doing specifically around somatic breathwork, I find it so beautiful that you went to the source of your grief and are now pouring out work that is beneficial for folks to go to the root of wherever their bodily manifestations of stagnant energy lives, and then helping them set it free.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes time to get to that place, though. It's like the little steps, like of starting a meditation practice, of just being honest with how we've been operating in this life. And like, I have plenty of like shit that I still need to, like boxes that I need to check and things that I've been pushing off. Actually, like did one thing today that I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually did it. But just knowing like when is that point that we commit to ourselves and we're like, you know what, I'm 100% on team me. Like, I know I have these things that keep coming up, and these are my contents of learning and my levers of growth, and I accept them all. And some of them I'm like, oh, we're moving right now. And then other ones I'm just like stuck in bumper to bumper traffic, and it's self-inflicted. But knowing that I'm on my side, and no matter what, there's always forgiveness and non-judgment towards self. That's like the starting point to then start investing into ourselves. And it either looks like starting a meditation practice or developing consistency in other wellness practices. But there's that switch that I feel like a lot of us come to. Like a lot of us, like it's easier just to kind of like sit back and then just be a robot and be at the job that you hate, and like still eat Chick-fil-A really, really late. And I still do all those things too. But like there's the awareness of it, of like knowing that like I got to walk back through that door of being mindful of these habits and changing these behaviors, and the consistency over time allows that awareness to blossom, that upgrade. And you're like, I didn't know that this could happen. And once you have one of those, that first experience of invest almost blindly, and then a new awareness blossoms from within you, and you're like, wait, this thing actually works. This stuff works. That alone has like inspired the constant recommitment to the practices that I participate in, and then being curious to expand into more practices. It's like, oh, this is real. Like spirituality is fucking real. It's real.
Totally. And I'm curious, is that something that was a part of your paradigm or program before, or is it something that you found along the way through meditation? Where did it begin? Where did these practices start for you?
It started in the meditation practice, just sitting with myself, like grieving for like a year. Or obviously I'm still grieving, it doesn't stop, but just like that first wave, and then just like allowing the smoke to clear and be like, all right, like life isn't what I'm not having fun. I'm not enjoying things. Like I need to do something now. And that urgency directed me towards something that had been kind of just in the vicinity, but not activated and put into place yet. So the daily meditation practice was the thing to really get clear on my own limitations in the areas where I had opportunity to grow and to take more responsibility for the life that I was living. Because it was very easy just to put myself in situations where someone can commit an offense as far as just like relationally, emotionally, like career, whatever. Like I'd always put myself in places where somebody else was in charge of how I felt. So they can do these things, they can maneuver and be not mindful of me. And then I always had someone to point and blame and point the finger at. And then I had to take responsibility and say like, hey, I'm putting myself in these situations. Like these people aren't doing anything outside of what they do. Like that's just how they move their energy around. That's how they handle situations. I am signing up to be a co-collaborator in this. So it's a tough pill to swallow though, when you're like, hey, I'm creating this, everything in my experience I'm creating. And if it's SHIT, then it's like, oh, dang, you got fingers pointing back at you and you have to own that. But once you do, you can kind of take that responsibility and put yourself next to people that value you, that see your talents, that can help you. And the list goes on. But yeah, meditation is for sure like the thing that opened me up to see things clearly.
I'm so curious. Where did that curiosity to meditate come from? Did you hear about it? Because if it was something that wasn't necessarily in the front of your sphere, I'd love to hear how people get started in that process, right?
Yeah. I think it's like early on, like I remember reading like Super Rich by Russell Simmons, like that he talks about meditation. And I was like, I don't know, like 21, like in college. And I read it and I was like, okay, so it was kind of just like an accessory. It's like a mindful accessory before it's like the live, laugh, love tote bag. It's like, you think that you're like, you go to like 2 yoga classes and then you're like, I'm spiritual and I have a tie-dye tapestry over my bed and I have my crystals. And those are the accessories that say that, hey, I'm connected to source. And for a lot of people, that's enough. Like that's enough to just be a quote unquote yogi on paper, but not really have practices and real deep connection. And I'm not here to cast judgment, but like, that's kind of what it was just like, all right, like I have this cool book, like I read it, it's nice, but I didn't really have like a reason enough to go commit my time to that at that time. And then a few years later, I came across a book called Eastern Body, Western Mind by Judith Anodea, I believe is the author's name. And she's talking about the chakra system. And I was like, oh, this is the first time I've heard this language be expressed. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what she's talking about. And I was just like hooked into that. And then the third book, before my mother got sick and before I moved to Portland, was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And that was like very similar to the last one. I was like, oh, like you can change who you are and your thoughts on like a biochemistry level just from thinking different thoughts. And there's a process, there's a science, and linking the science in the spirituality is where the rubber meets the road for me. I'm all about like practicality, like what can I do? What is verifiable? Like there are times where I blast off and it's just like very non-physical, and it's like, did that magic really just happen? And I can speak in that language too, but I'm also like, all right, let's take the slow route and let's do like do the actual work to then get those results, rather than just wait for this aha, like enlightenment to just drop from the sky. I'm like, I'll be waiting forever if that's the case. So yeah, those books got me curious. And then the pain of loss is the thing that really was like, yo, I'm desperate. I need relief. Here's this direction that I know could provide some resolve.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So often, and from my own experience as well, grief has just been such a portal and a catalyst to a deeper knowing and truth of who we are at our core. And it's interesting how that often is the portal for so many folks. But until and I really loved that you said this earlier, it's taking the responsibility. The responsibility piece is huge. Until we take the responsibility and the onus off someone else and stop playing the victim, I mean, we'll continue to play that loop over and over and over again, because that's what these paradigms, that's kind of how it's set up, right? Like
it's the food.
Right? All the oils, all the sugars. I mean, there's so many things, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the food for that system. Like the food is the blame. It's like to point the finger at something else. It's taking the energy of the finger pointing. It's like, if your finger is pointing at something else, that thing is receiving the energy from you, but your finger should be pointing at self. So then you can feed yourself your own love, attention, and energy. But yeah.
So good. And how, because you're doing this work, because you're in the thick of it, how do you do this for yourself? How do you show up for you so that you can therefore show up for others?
I think the showing up for others, it's kind of like wrapped up into each other. Like one of them, that's kind of like if I'm like a creative director, I'm like, ooh, I just like broke the code, because it holds me accountable to my own practice. Like I can't go completely off the rails, because I have to do a morning meditation at the park with everybody. So it's like, all right, well, you got to hold yourself accountable, because these people are going to be waiting on you. And it's kind of like how I create accountability is by like broadcasting an intention, and just by putting it out there, like there's an expectation that's made public, and I want to be a man of my word, and I don't want to look like an idiot. So I have to follow through with the thing that I made public. So that's kind of how I hold myself accountable to those things. As far as like investing and just like making time for myself, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of baked into the cookie, because I just enjoy just being alone. I enjoy just hanging out. Like I don't do a whole lot of things. I think just like savoring. There's a lot of savoring going on, as far as just like, all right, when can I just like let go of the steering wheel and just ghost ride the whip and just like sit back and just enjoy, like, oh, this is amazing. I think that's kind of, those are the moments, and not get too caught up in like forcing anything, because I see where that kind of gets you, as far as just like, oh, I have to make this thing, da 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 da. I'm just like, do what you will.
Yeah. And letting the creative force guide you. And you're already working with so many beautiful creative projects. And I'd be curious, I feel like it could be an iteration of exactly what you just said, but how do you find your creative flow if you're feeling a little sticky, or if you're feeling like there's something stagnant? What do you do to get out of that rhythm, or, you know, find a different flow, find a different course?
Yeah. I don't do anything. I'm just like, let me be with the thing, because it's like I can't effectively create something. I think that's like, gone are the days where it's like oh, like I wish I could create something, and there's all these excuses, and then it's just like, I'm like, oh, I don't need to prove myself. Like I already know that I can create anything that I want to create. So whenever I'm not feeling it, or it's just like I'm not feeling good, it's like I need my attention. I need this creative energy to be consolidated and localized with myself until that wave crashes. I know that it's going to be done at a certain point. So let me be present with the bad feelings or the anxiety or whatever that is for the amount of time. Like I'm sure you probably felt this last full moon, like so intense. And I'm not even that guy. I'm not even like, oh, the new moon, the full moon, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't even think about that shit. But like, I'm just becoming more and more aware of these lunar cycles and just the energy. I'm getting very, very sensitive to the energy of people and like places. And when this energy came up, like a bunch of shit came up. Like I was like, oh God, I'm like fighting the demons. I'm like, what is going on here? And I was like, I'm not thinking in that moment, like, hey, I'm going to go do a photo shoot with friends and do like, I'm not even thinking about that stuff. I'm like, oh, I want to stay home where I know it's safe. I want to make sure that like my incense are going 24/7. Like my energy does not feel good. I express that I feel like I'm like in a blender and then frozen solid energetically. So my energy is like all over the place and then it's stuck. And then I'm like, yo, like this doesn't feel good at all. And it literally, that energy was like from 4 days before the full moon to like 5 days after was just like not it. And the last thing I'm going to do is force myself to create something or to be productive with anything. And then like a couple of days ago, it just like ended very abruptly, this feeling of confusion and just lack of energy. And then I'm like, okay, I'm back. Let's get back to creating things and being myself. But just knowing that like, I don't need to prove it to anybody as far as like my abilities.
Yeah. Not needing to prove it to anyone. That is such a powerful piece. I think in our society, especially, we like, even with social media, I can find social media really exhausting. So there's times where I'm just like, I just am not going to do this right now. I just need to kind of take a break from it. And I think coming back to the return of ourselves, just like you've said so many times in this conversation, and really sitting with what's here for us in the here and now is the opportunity. That's where we get so much of our own understanding of just the human existence and what we're here to do and just experience, essentially. And it's so good because if we take ourselves out of the crunchy, sticky moments, then we miss the moments where we can sometimes learn the most, right? I would argue to say to learn the most always, but
for sure. It just sucks though. It just sucks. like there's so many things that I'd rather experience than like these reoccurring things. But it's like, if we completely disconnect from it, like being in that space and just like it stays there. Like it stays there and we're going to pick it up at that same spot. Like we didn't change chapters. We just creased the page and we'll be right at that spot again. And it's like, all right, like you can do that. But then it's like, I don't know, 10 years later and you're still dealing with the same shit. It's like, yo, like, what are you here to do? Like, so that's where I think it's just taking that intentional slow path, just knowing, like I'd say like intentionally in the slow lane. Cause it's like, all right, like I said before, there's plenty of stuff for me that's been a long journey just to approach it. But it's like, hey, we're going that direction. We're going to go through it. We're going to make it out the other side whenever that time comes.
Yes, definitely. I love the idea of the slow lane. That's, for me, so counterintuitive to what I was raised with. And I've really been leaning into that this season. And it feels wrong. Like in my body, I have to remind myself, you're safe. And I know so much of the work that you do with somatic breathwork is that. It's the remembrance and the return to the body and to the somatic practices that we all desperately could learn so much from. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about your journey with somatic breathwork, how it began, and just whatever feels relevant for you with that experience.
Yeah, my journey with somatic breathwork began at a point where I guess I don't want to say I was bored, but it was very much like meditation's great. I love it. I think it should be like everyone should do it. That's kind of like the foundation of opening presence is like, all right, like what is our practice? How do we show up in our practice on the daily in the slow lane intentionally? But I feel like as of now, it's like there's a lot of stuff that's in the way before one can sit down in a daily practice. Like there's a lot of things emotionally, energetically, physically, that when you sit down, it's like overactive. It's like, yo, there's a lot of stuff going down for normal people. Just pick them off the street, like walking in New York and be like, hey, go sit down and do a meditation practice for real. It's like they have a lot of stuff that is going on inside and it's swirling. And the idea after my first session with my friend Ryan Williams, amazing human being who you should interview, he guided me in my first session. He actually told me he was going out to Austin to get trained for it. And he came over to my apartment at the time and we did a session in my living room, and I completely like transported to another dimension, just like single pointed consciousness, like very psychedelic experience. And I was like, what the hell just went down? Like, I've done some psychedelics and I hold it, I don't compare it to any of the other ones, but I hold it with the same reverence of what is possible. In subsequent sessions, like, were nothing like that first one. Like, I've had very like physical somatic sessions of like, oh, I'm very aware of this pain that is in my body, and then anger arises and sadness arises and images of ancestors arise. Like, there's the whole gamut is all tied in the body. And what inspired me after like letting go of a lot of this armor that I've compiled over the years, these protective measures that I've inherited and for good reason. But once I started like letting go, the idea of incorporating it into the meditation just made a lot of sense. It's like, let's clear away all of this energy and then like have a clean slate to sit down after we've let go a lot of the stuff. So that's kind of where I've been very keyed in on, or at least it's becoming more clear as to the importance of having this almost ceremonial breathwork experience to release a lot of these emotions, a lot of this stress, and all of this this energy, and liberate our voices, liberate our minds, become clear. And then from that place, a meditation cushion looks a lot sexier.
So true. It is so true. I started with meditation too, and that's where it began for me. And then breathwork was just it's a different sphere. And when you have that opportunity to be with the divine in that kind of way, it's so impactful. It's been truly the most transformative tool that's helped me through this journey.
Yeah. And the meditation's like, it's purely observational. It's like, what do you notice? And then the breath work is an activation where it's like, I'm going straight into it and we're moving things. And that's the part that I appreciate, especially like in this culture that we're in of like the doing culture. And it's like, all right, well, how do you make spirituality into doing? It's like, oh, breath work. Cool. It's like, it's familiar. It's familiar to people.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to me that we are so detached from a relationship with the breath. And that, for me, I'm sure for you in your own work, that was one of the things that I really had to sit with. I would catch myself after these experiences, like holding my breath. And then I had the cognizance to know, okay, well, if I can actually use this as a tool in ceremonial spaces, well, then that means that I can also use it as a tool in my every moment. So catching ourselves and then playing with it and having just the ebb and flow be here for us whenever.
Most definitely. Yeah. I can tell like when my thoughts are limited, it's like, if I go straight to my breath, I'm like, oh, I'm only like breathing from like my chest up. And how do I soften the belly? How do I relax more into myself? Because I'm trying to like escape in an essence. It feels like your soul's trying to like escape your body when you have anxiety or limited thinking or fear thinking. It's like, I want to be anywhere but right here. And that's what it like, that's what it feels like. I'm like, get me out of this place. And it's like, no. Like, this is where you belong. Like, sit here. You're fine. But yeah, the breath can definitely bring us back into connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting out of that flight or fright. And the vagus nerve, it's so fascinating to me that we get to work with these ancient modalities that have been here for so many of our ancestors, and we're just getting to experience them now for such an incredible time. Like we all could benefit from these spiritual interactions. And I know that so much of the work that you do creatively and spiritually has now blended into this beautiful sphere of everything that you're putting out in the world. So what did that process look like for you to blend it all? I know that it all belongs and it's all together, but I always love to hear the experience and the story for the person because it's so unique to you.
Yeah, I think over the last number of years, I was kind of like obsessed with this idea of like multi-creative as like a concept of like, oh, I can do everything, which the clarity has come that it's kind of just like a disorganized, like seeking validation. But honestly, like it's almost like a survival tactic too. Is just like in some areas, like that would be my income. Like I look back and I'm like, oh shit, like I haven't had like a boss in over 5 years. And it wasn't like an intentional thing, but it was like, hey, like I'm going to shoot photos over here, or I'm going to like drive Uber for X amount of years, like, and piece it all together and just hustle from sideline to sideline with no end in sight. But acquiring different skills, but then also like following what I was like passionate about, like saying yes to a lot of things. Like I had friends who like I went to the same college with, and he's like a film director, and he came up from the Bay Area and was like, hey, do you want to like assist on a commercial shoot at Expedia? And I was just like, yeah. It was nothing, but it was just like, hey, I'll try this opportunity out, because I hadn't really been on like a real set before, and just seeing what it's like to be on set and work with other people in the industry. And it kind of demystified what that looks like. I'm like, oh, it's just like everything. It's just people. And whether that's like doing video shoots or photography for like famous people, or whether that's like taking out the trash at a restaurant because you're a cook or whatever. It's just being with whatever experience is there. But then over time, all of these skills stack up, and then they can be applied and administered in like a wide variety of ways. So now a lot of the things that I've experienced in the past it's not so daunting. And even the people and the businesses and the experiences that I used to pedestalize are now like on the ground floor. I'm just like, I don't look at anything as like it's too much or it's too big for me or anything. I just know that I have all these experiences that I can apply to everything, but then prioritize the things that are reciprocal, that also give me something. So that's kind of like the barometer at which I choose to deploy these like quote unquote skills. But now just like applying them to myself. It's like, all right, I shoot photos for people. I can shoot photos for myself. I shoot videos for people. I can shoot videos for myself. And just making things simple and fun.
That's so good. And making things fun. Yes. Yes to more fun. I do love that you were kind of sticking your hands in all different kinds of things. I think that it's fun to be multifaceted. We are such multidimensional creatures, and to be able to entertain these interests and then kind of just see where they lead, staying curious, being full of wonder. And that creates such an opportunity for us when we stay open and say yes to see just what life has to offer us, right? I'm sure you've met so many dope people.
Too many people.
Too many.
Yeah. I think the biggest learning lesson was actually like learning how to say no. Like that's later, because I said yes to a lot of things. And in a lot of the times it was like, because I got to pay this bill, I got to pay this rent, I got to do this, I got to do that. And just saying yes to everything until there was a point where it's like, oh, this is just too much. Like I can't keep running. And it's like neglecting like my baby opening presents. It was like, oh, wait, like if I say yes to this thing, that means I'm not taking like this business that I am passionate about to the next level. So finally coming to that realization of like, oh, I need to say no to these other things in order to fully give everything. Cause I think I'm very, I don't think I had ever given everything to something before. And whenever I do that, then the results happen. So I'm like, hey, why don't I like fully like commit to this? Cause I think there's that little part of us of, if I fully commit to this and it fails, then I'm going to be homeless on the street and da 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 da. So I got to make sure I have all these other opportunities to make income or to be successful or whatever. But then it's like, say one of those other things that aren't your core passion are the things that provides for you the most. But then the trade-off for that is that you have to avoid the thing that gives you the most. So you're going to end up resenting it at some point.
Yeah, that's a good word. It's a good word for most of us. I'm a firm believer that we're all creatives. I really do believe that we're all artists in our own right. It's just about uncovering and unearthing what's at the root for us. And I think that's what a capitalist structure wants to distract us from, is these fears of being pushed out of these societal structures that we're a part of. But when you take the risk, you brought this up before we jumped on and hit record. And I just find it so beautiful that it's just taking the next step and just seeing where it guides you. And that's exactly what you're doing. And it's just so cool. Like where did that edge come into play when you were just like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take this next step to trust my purpose and my passion and just go in that direction.
I think it's, like I said before, it's pretty gradual, but I think trusting the feeling of ease. And it's like the swiftest stroke, like comes with like not a lot of pressure, like the most efficient, I guess, execution of something. Like the things that I feel like have the most impact were things that were in the moment where I was present and that I wasn't thinking of 2 to 10 different things at the same time. I was just with whatever it was. And then it's just sharing that thing that was aligned in that moment without any strategy behind it. It was just like, oh, this is pure. Let's release it into the world and not have an expectation for it. But I think that's kind of just like the way that I want to live, as far as just being full of ease and not strong arming and forcing things. So connecting back to our core nature, however we feel most at peace in life, and then just trusting whatever falls from us is the thing, is the essence, is the gift. And then we just like pass that off into the community or into the ecosystem and just allow it to do its thing without too much of our involvement.
I felt that so deeply in my heart center. So that's when you know it's true. I could absolutely feel that. Thank you. Thank you for choosing to step in your authentic nature and choosing to make that conscious decision to choose your responsibility to be this iteration of yourself, because I believe that we're all mirrors for one another. And when someone steps into their truth and someone steps into their authentic nature, I believe that it permissions others to do the same for themselves, or at least invites them into being curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you. Thank you for doing it, you know?
Oh, thank you.
It's just beautiful. Yeah. It's so good. I think I want to share this, but I shared this with you before, and I think that it's cool for people to hear, just moments of vulnerability. And I had a moment of insecurity earlier just talking with you today. And I think that it's a cool thing to talk about because we need more vulnerability. So in my breathwork session this morning, I was feeling really anxious and talking to you because you are doing the things that I envision myself doing. You are doing the breath work. You are doing the creative intentions. You are setting the tone for being a guide and a safe space for others and community. And I know that it's been a process to get here, but I just want to say that I'm so grateful for the space that you've made me feel so comfortable and safe, because we get to break these paradigms of comparison. And you're creating a really safe space for me to just be. And the ease part is really felt. So
yeah. No, thank you. And you're doing the same exact thing for me. Like, this doesn't just like exist like in isolation. It's like I need places to land as well, because a lot of spaces that I encounter, or like, there's not someone to hold me. So you're providing that for me as well. So I appreciate you for that. And you're doing the damn thing. It's like saying yes is like the access point to all of it. It's just like, all right, say yes today. All right, tomorrow it's a little bit harder, but I'm still going to say yes. And it's just that over and over again. And it's like, it evolves and it changes, and some things drop off, some things pick back up. But yeah, you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the encouragement, and just again for being a beautiful model of also just being a man of color and just doing this work. This is so needed. And I'm curious if you would share just a little bit of what that's looked like for you, because you get to change the script, and you are changing the script. And to be a model for young men, older men at any age or stage, or any person, it doesn't need to be a male-bodied individual, but you get to represent this beautiful network of choosing the thing, doing the thing. And what is that felt like to do that so boldly and bravely?
Yeah, it's still so new, because even just this last week, like hosting like a breathwork ceremony, and like the people who decide to come to show up and whatnot. But for a lot of people, it's their first time ever sitting in any sort of sacred circle. Like, it's literally just, it's not a cultural thing that we're used to in the West. Like, it's not a thing at all. So recognizing that it's like, oh, damn, like, people aren't used to this. And this could be somebody's very first time ever sharing something that's been on their heart or that's been on their mind. So I think I'm just have to kind of put myself in check a lot, because there's a part of me that wants to like usher people's spiritual growth and maturation. And I'm like, oh, I can see it. Because I just did it like a couple years ago. And if I could do it, you could do it. And it doesn't work like that. And I got to like pull back a little bit and just be like, oh, everyone's got their own pace, and I can't want it more than them. And for me, it's just, as long as I continue to show up, then I'm doing my job. Like, I open the door and I like stick my head out. I'm like, hey, this way. And I can like offer for them to walk through, but they have to walk through. So I'm like a Walmart greeter at this point, where I'm just like, hey, how's it going? Like, come on in. Like, we have all the things, like everything you need. It's on aisle 15. Like, that's basically, because then I don't have to like personalize every single thing. And it's like, if I have a friend that comes in, and like, especially like with Black men, like my demo, like my friends that I've done sessions with, like just the way that they like just the way that they communicate their experience, I'm like being judgmental. I'm like, but you didn't experience this and that and da da da. Like, why are you talking about like something that's irrelevant from your own experience? It's like they'll talk and it's like, oh yeah, like my grandma, like relational physical world things, when I'm like, what does your inner world say? But it's like I just need to be there, not wishing for them to have an experience. And that's kind of my own work, kind of woven into hosting these types of experiences for people. It's a dance.
Definitely. And nuanced territory, because you are choosing to do this work and it's new. And because of who you are in the world, and you're a Black man and you're getting to do this work and open the door for folks, it attracts so many people to you, and that's incredible. What an incredible opportunity. But again, I totally understand that piece with it's like keeping the ego in check. I did breath work with my dad, and he like just he couldn't get into it. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Kind of hit there, but it was that physical thing. He was just really uncomfortable, and I just don't think he wanted to go there. And fair enough. But I had to check my ego after. I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, I feel like I held space pretty well. My mom just blasted off when I did it with my mom.
Yeah.
My dad did not have the same experience, and that's okay. And just being able to permission ourselves to know that Spirit's actually the one doing the work, and we're just here holding the space it's good for us to be able to let that go.
Yeah. If we have I do like group ceremonies with my friends, and like some ceremony we've done like 4 together, and we're like slowly like growing into like larger spaces and stuff. But like we've have some that are like from the very jump, like everybody's just on the same mission and we're all connected, and it's just like a love fest. And other times it's like the air gets pulled out of the room, and it's just like the energy that's there. I'm just like, what's going on? Like, oh, it's like people aren't open right now, and like they're coming here for their own healing, and they haven't reached that point. Some people are more ready to kind of be open from the front end and then open up even more throughout. But some people, like, they're coming to you to open up just a little fraction more. Like, we don't get to say like, no, you got to be at 150% open. It's like, no, like I'm at 2%. And if I get to 3%, like that's a win. And like you said, just removing the ego from it. 'Cause I think we want the best for everybody. But yeah, we can't want it more than someone else, or push anybody to a place that they're not comfortable.
1,000%. Yeah. That's so good. Creatively, you've got to do some stuff that's super fun for you. I know that you take photos and that you shoot film. What else do you do as a creative outlet for you, for fun, for play?
For play. I chill so hard. I think discovering music is something that I've taken up a lot of just like experimenting with like DJing and stuff, and just like curating an energy. 'Cause it's like you listen to like, I'll go through like phases, but when I'm in like my music, like searching phase, and then kind of like putting together kind of like your soundtrack for your daily life. And it's just amazing like what you can embody by listening to certain sounds. So that's been a lot of fun. What else do I do to play? Literally just like hang out in the backyard and just soak up sun. And I don't know, I'm so like simple. I'm like clean. I like a clean house. I like good food. But yeah, there's not a part of me, or at least there is not as much of a part of me of like the need for being entertained, like the consumptive drive to like, oh, I gotta go do this, I gotta go do that, I gotta, like, just existing and feeling good inside of my body is 100% enough. And then like everything else is just kind of like extra, like just the living, like day to day, like living. I'm just like grateful and blessed for like the people that are in my life, the experiences that I have, the opportunity to have like a canvas in front of me every day. And then just to kind of like add new paint and like create new shapes and have new experiences that I'm like literally just like making right in front of me. Like my Instagram, just like reaching out to new yoga studios and just creating new relationships. Like with you, this is our first conversation, and it's like, oh, we're going to know each other for a very, very long time.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, this is the fun part. Like, what are you talking about? It's like woven into like, this isn't work. Like, we're just being ourselves. And the more of this I can do, like, that's the whole point of all of this. That's the whole point. And then to be an example for someone else to be like, hey, I want to do that same shit. And if we inspire that one person, then we did our job. But are we like walking in alignment with our soul? Yes or no? It's like it's black or white. It's either yes or no. And if we are, then everything is play.
So good. Yes. Everything is play when we're walking in alignment with our soul. That is the tagline of this episode. That is so...
Yes, we found it. We found it.
It's so good because it's so true. It brings us back. And I don't know if was it your post today? You had a post about childlike wonder. And it's so true. It's just coming back to the innate essence of, I believe, all that we are. Once we scrape off all that, that's what we have to do, right? When we're doing the inner work and the spiritual journey, so much of it is about just excavating all of the stuff we put on ourselves to not allow ourselves to feel the freedom that we need to step into our purpose with trust at the forefront. So
most definitely. Beautifully said.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. You are such a beautiful mirror for me, and I'm so grateful for doing what felt scary and reaching out to you. And I'm just super glad that we get to now be connected, and I would love to hang out with you in the flesh. And yeah, I would love to get a little slice of experiential wisdom for folks from you. What would you have to share with people if you could share one slice of wisdom from your own experience?
One slice of cheesecake.
It could be two.
As long as it's cheesecake, then we're good. A slice of wisdom. I would say that you're right. You're right. Whatever you think, you are 100% right. And it's been a long journey to like convince. You almost have to like deprogram yourself. But whatever you do say, like, you're right. And it gets easier over time, believing in yourself.
I like that. It does get easier over time, believing in yourself. And thank you. Thank you for the way you show up in the world. I really can't say it enough. I know that it's not easy all the time, but you're doing it. And I'm here to cheer you on every step of the way. I really believe in the work that you're doing, and I see you clearly. It feels like very clearly. So thank you again. And I would love if you could just share where folks can find you, how they can work with you, give them the deets.
The deets. Well, you can find me on Instagram at opening.presence. And then my personal channel is at Aaron Robinson. From those places, you can sign up for somatic breathwork ceremonies, either in person or online. Always got plenty of things coming, as well as a link to my podcast, Opening Presence with Aaron Robinson. Website coming soon. All of those things, the full build out is coming soon. But yeah, thank you so much. You're a natural at being a host of a podcast. Like this is probably like the best podcast experience I've had as a guest, for sure.
Oh, Thank you so much, Aaron. I mean, it definitely made it easy that your experience. So it was like the flow was just, it was gravy. It was nice. It was fun to
It could be heavy lifting. It's just like, sometimes it's just like when you get like the one word answers and you're just like, elaborate, please.
Can you further extend, please?
Yeah.
So good. Well, thank you so much again. I'm sending you so much love and so much gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Hey there. It's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too. So if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.